advance of the adversaries increase the difficulty to secure their arsenals for ability of the nuclear weapons, the ultimate instruments of the deterrence, as simple as the expansion of the disjunction between the theories, the nuclear, the revolution, the prediction, and the foreign policy. The rivalry remains a logical statement. Still maybe is irreversible to the arsenals of the survivable to the vulnerable in the future. The nuclear weapons is the best tool for deterrence of the possibility by arming the strike capabilities and the fear of the opponent by doing the same. The effect of the nuclear explains why the nuclear weapons have not transformed the international politics to rapid rate of change to the counterforce and attack, increase the uncertainties of adversaries' capabilities. China is unprepared. We have to strike down Go fire in 16. War with the Chinese are the most pressing in the development of the military technical, the doctrines of the possession of the guidance of the networking used to target the opposing forces in the face point of the U.S. and Chinese military poses serious threat to each other, creates the ability of the reason to strike the enemy and the forces before they strike one of the core of the Chinese strategies. If the PLA fights at a high technical powerful enemy, we must achieve the operational suddenness. I'm going to mark that's the card. The only other argument is that institutions are perceived as unequal and disrespectful to China, Denmark, and the institution are not always peaceful in the end of the stasis, so they generate the friction developed between the state and try to coordinate their representative organizations that create the dominant power who believe the natural majority to generate majority of the organized the voting rights and the paper the popular participation of the efforts of legitimacy and hegemonic of the right to the claim of being that the rule breaking out to benefit as one of the solutions unevenly used one of the local rules of the champion ones who will benefit the and once they have lost the advantage. We're going to take a couple seconds of prep. How much are we at? 6.
Oh, it's somewhere.
60.
6:14.
So, do you have time to read one card for me?
Sure.
Okay, cool. It's this card that's photo. We're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Why is war coming now?
Why is war coming now?
Yeah, what evidence says that also?
We have read like 4 or 5 pieces of cards. The 1 in C evidence indicates that nuclear modernization makes war uniquely likely. The TEGA evidence indicates that the U.S. and China are caught in a trap. I believe it's called the Thucydides trap. I'm terrible with big words. You have conceded those warrants, which indicate that military competition, fights for hegemony, trade, etc.
Will it be nuclear or will it not be nuclear?
Yeah, we've read cards that say it would be nuclear.
Okay,
If we wait, it will be nuclear.
If we wait, it will be nuclear.
Okay,
yes.
so then what's happening, who strikes first now?
In a world,
conventionally.
Two points. First, we don't think it necessarily matters as long as the war comes now. However, we do think, based off your internal link scenario, that it will be the U.S. because they are the aggressor.
Okay, what about the app prevents U.S. first strikes?
So the argument is a couple of fold. 1, we think an escalation with China now is uniquely good, even if the U.S. isn't the one explicitly striking first, because the U.S. can win the war. So even if you win, that war happens in the world of the AF, through your Africa scenario, that does not matter because it means we still beat China and prevent a long-term.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that a war now doesn't involve nukes, right? Like you just said it. Explain the Denmark evidence that's literally saying that nuclear weapons have been incorporated into literally every single strategy we have in any conflict with China.
A couple arguments. You consider the 1 in C card indicate that things such as counterforce strikes would prohibit those from being launched.
The argument is that they're modernizing their weapons to the point that they can destroy our second strike capability.
You should go ahead and concede that and see how that works out for you, because that is a warrant for why war is inevitable.
Okay.
Please concede that.
More on this stuff. The Gombert, Savelos, and Garofalo evidence from the 1 in C and from the 2 in C both indicate that war wouldn't escalate at all. And specifically, it says where is it? Yeah, it says that it would be unlikely that they would use nuclear weapons because even in intensely violent conflict, neither side would regard its losses as serious. Why is this inevitable in the future? Why in the future?
Because the decision calculus and the dynamics of the war fundamentally change when China modernizes.
Okay,
we have read cards that say China modernizing. When China in 10 to 20 years succeeds that, it would mean that any conventional war would lead to a runaway nuclear war, which causes extinction.
Okay.
We're not this is the arc we are going for. It was in the 1 in C, chose not to answer, we've extended this.
Okay, and then the TEGA evidence are the whatever, it's fine.
facts that are covered. Yeah.
What's your?
Gonna be in, finishing up where the truancy left off. It's gonna be the flex is, counterplan, advantage counterplan, then the advantage, versus advantage.
So flex, advantage counter plan, and then advantage one, but before that stuff, you read the last card?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want this one, right?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
The existence of U.S. institutions are driving competition. Dialogue 18. Politics is heavy, and politics interdependence of U.S. or trust the nuclear weapons reduce the defense concept of false independent conflict of priorities. Hegemony constrained by the existing single action, yes, they illustrate hegemony in a little direct competition, large Japanese violence. Allegedly, nature of the imperial military competition and engage merchants, and a far grander scale than enactment of the mechanism of fostering national defense of the order, social control, they repower offer the different divisions of the important issues of the data that organization over their formula during their previous freedom identified the fragmentation made a release and season or independent interest no longer have to make accommodations with one another. Also, turns all their scenarios. War now means all of their scenarios are net better than later because of war in which more nukes and more nukes are used and last longer later on intensifies all of their disease cyber scenarios and Middle Eastern war.
Okay.
No link, no risk. No link, no risk of the turns counterplan. The counterplan solves the entirety of the first. It increases and modernizes our military network. So there's no risk of miscalculations with the other actors identified by their interlinked scenarios, except for trying to implementing things like new nuclear communication systems, expanded training and screening of operators, and disentangling conventional and nuclear operators. Also develops a series of hotlines that allows to communicate with all the countries that their interlink evidence identifies and communicates the nature of the deals, so that there isn't a risk of transparency or secrecy. Secrecy also, which solves all their offense, even if it doesn't trigger modeling. The counterplan gets one which solves the internal impact to all of their scenarios. They say it doesn't. They don't know what the counterplan does or solves. Solves the cybersecurity. That solves cybersecurity of nuclear C3 Fear 16. Second recommendation would be the nuclear arms to protect the nuclear system with true network defensive firewalls, no physical security, social use, and upgraded infrastructure, redundant communications, and better training, security operators that reduce alert levels and keep nuclear systems simple as separate way to security and mitigate dangers of possible by cyber nuclear states and the start discussion of cyber nuclear nexus, pursuing competence building, and therefore they concrete better or more agreements to construct a nuclear C to the system that would be a foundation or broader architectural and technological changes in nuclear orthodoxy, and they say the plan doesn't solve secrecy and transparency. Any time that a country feels like sees fucking random new weapons, American-made weapons being used in their area, they're gonna hit up the US and be like, what the hell is going on? Obviously solves and how that plan solves all the wars in your center alone. Seriously, implications of relations with both sides and North Korean civility, deeper discussion of the responsibility, reduce the risk of confrontation, the advantage.
You should say answer no solvency advocates.
Also answers no solvency advocates.
No, like answer it. Like they broke nail.
Sure, we don't. The solvency advocates stuff. A, we've read solvency advocates above. B, they were a broken new which justifies testing for multiple positions because we didn't have time to research the strategy. They're just logical counterplans. Also.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Our recent reject argument team advantage. only going for the defense because I think it's handled very poorly. First, the democracy stuff. Democracy decline is inevitable because of Trump. They can't outweigh all the other shit he's doing with part of the investigation, which is just a logical warrant, which is a logical bar to hold the affirmative to. Doesn't solve war there. The card they read in the truth is cherry picks. It says public pressure checks, but it's also the reason why it causes more public reactivity and misperception and aggression to put pressure on politicians to be more aggressive, creating feedback loops for our holistic analysis from Gretzky and Cornich's outweigh democracy can't control ideology. Larson, 12. Democrats people that are draws their broad collusion and short figure more than that is other people that are going to listen to West will support whether they keep the state from making words that represent democracy. Freeland found equality, voting does not budget according to the democracy, peace, or it doesn't. Government effects and actions and appear signs of election can't be popular more democracies that are more likely to do more than will fight. The disease and stuff. I'm gonna read a bunch of cards here because block is a constructive infectious disease on cause extinction virus 17. Pandemic no longer cause extinction 833 plus the number of extinction is 15 or less than 4% of disease and medical global just other factors treatment our species is numerous just rational or something likely to become a time of pathogen get close performance with the selection of pressure of pathogen not being lethal and disease more constitution burden of variation or 14. This is what address species highly contagious China birth themselves made within variations of host may not really resistant may end up the affected individuals who survive are also containing many instances of pathogen resistant genes and are spread to the whole population. What? Also the internal link is that other country use and develop bioweapons, which means
if they made a perp say it links to that.
counterpoint links to net benefit, obviously the turn on case. Disease self-insurance McCabe and March 98. The effects of disease are short-term natural population about so I can have less of this disease extinction that seems impossible action involved in the United States, which means that they can continue to affect but not kill. And DP justifies the differential war the name of promoting peace. Minor 15. Democrat is inclined to justify pro-democratic intervention. These can feel Democratic person can be justified for intervention use more policy. The best example of democracy is thus been expressly aggressively by the U.S. and Marx. They don't go to war with each other. Mark that card out.
I just sent the doc out. You never sent it out.
745, sorry.
Just to clarify, what's the net benefit of the counterpoint?
The impact rate.
That's a true fact. Just find a scenario to solve it.
case. Okay, the order is advantage 1, solvency, the counterclaim, and advantage 2.
Say it one more time.
Advantage 1 is secrecy, solvency, the counterclaim, and transparency.
Alright.
Democratic collapse isn't inevitable because of Trump. There's really no warrant for this. We have specific evidence that says that the lines have decreased on democracy because no one knows what is happening in America. The Casper evidence says that he has unique promotion ability to stabilize a ton of confidence that they really literally no impact events. It does not more their evidence doesn't assume the modeling from the United States that Trump doesn't double because they literally have no warrant. They just randomly. So we have a ton of evidence. The writer evidence specifically says that democracy is an imperialist because it doesn't promote it or it doesn't promote it. Eventually, that's not supposed to do any unique results. They have no terms case analysis for that specific impact. I'm going to concede all the disease impact because they concede that it causes cyber attacks, which causes nuclear war, which is independent on any China warning. There's no way to determine because their impacts are extremely little big, and their attacks are coming from the states and October 19 China, and already hackers increase cyber attacks in the United States, China, and already hackers are aggressively attacking U.S. government agencies. Recent attacks attributed to Chinese hackers are attempting to review the solvency page. They conceded an independent extinction scenario that they have literally no defense to, no terms case analysis to, which is and the counterclaim definitely does solve it. It needs a congressional fix to stabilize the Middle East because of executive fluctuation, and that caused extinction through nuclear war. The counterclaim. If the counterclaim solves 100% of the F, then there's literally no net benefit, and because it would solve the China war, and since there was no solvency press in the block, that means you can vote affirmative because it just literally solves better. Senator Carter read this says that hotline solve is literally a piece of evidence that says that hotline solve U.S.-China war, which means you should assume that the counterclaim solves the U.S.-China war, and at least a net benefit. They don't solve all the rest of the wars because the counterclaim is very explicit that it only establishes hotlines between the United States and all of these other countries individually, just between the United States. It doesn't establish a collaborative hotline, which is important because the modeling is key to international transparency, which gets modeled, which they literally have no precedent. That opens up transparency for literally all countries to all of them. The reason the civil wars happen in places like Africa is because other countries don't know what weapons they have. It doesn't matter if the United States knows what weapons Somalia has. If countries in the region don't, if the countries in the region don't know, then those countries won't matter. It doesn't solve cybersecurity. There's no warrant for solving the evidence. The evidence just specifically says that it would increase cybersecurity. It doesn't say that it would stop all the attacks. They don't decrease executive flexibility, which we say blurs the lines between war and peace, and encourages state actors to attack us. And they don't change the NPR, which means that we would respond to those type of cyber attacks with a nuclear weapon. It doesn't solve it. It literally doesn't. It doesn't solve advantage two because it doesn't increase the modeling for the reason that I outlined above, and with specifically the United States having these transparency efforts through the app and increasing congressional control of these is necessary. We're the only ones. We're the only ones writing a solvency advocate for this specific argument. You should reject all the planks of the counterclaim that they literally have no evidence for because literally no evidence for it. Doesn't matter whether we do affirmative. They're doing so encourages a ton of stupid planks that we can literally no one has evidence for, and it distorts the literature base, which is an independent reason to reject the rest of their planks, the transparency advantage. there's a huge framing issue. They have literally no piece of evidence that says that if a war were to start now, we would conventionally first strike them tactically, which means that if a war were to happen, you should assume that it would be nuclear. They would contradictory pieces of evidence. So 1 and C evidence says that it would just be conventional. The 2 and C evidence, the Denmark evidence says that if we were to go to war, there would be so many ways in which you would use nuclear weapons that it would inevitably be used. They read contradictory evidence, which means you should resolve unfavorably for them. Resolve unfavorably for them. It doesn't turn out with the case on time frame. The non-evidence specifically says that there are more people that are dying from illicit arms sales and acquisition than nuclear war, which means that even if they win all their China nuclear war claims, we still outweigh, because this is a huge framing issue that they just have not grappled with, and they have no sovereignty press, which means that we easily outweigh nuclear war. It doesn't happen on time frame because it's literally happening right now. But I'm going to read impact defense cards in nuclear winter just because in case outweighs wherever that is. Maybe I'm not. Okay, never mind. They literally exploded this for 9 minutes after reading like three super flippy cards, so it definitely justifies new answers, and they literally don't have a good answer to the hog evidence. Just that it stabilizes all confidence because it opens up transparency efforts. It opens up transparency norms, and it stabilizes all confidence because it opens up lines of communication between all of them. And even if they win all their destruction claims about U.S.-China war, they still conceded 2 independent scenarios of Latin America war and Africa war. Each of those escalate independent of the United States and China, specifically the Latin America war escalates between countries like Russia, China, and Iran, and they're fighting over Latin American influence, which means that those are independent scenarios, which means you auto default affirmative, and it doesn't turn all the scenarios. They literally have no war in the 2 and C or 1 and R, and no U.S.-China war. That's Heat 17 relative stability. Also, the hostility escalation remains unlikely. China and the United States as a country remain far from better rivals. We each other's important behavior. Military subjects, whether reach and military opposition operations, lower intensity military rates, unopposed to find a major war, looking at preparation constituencies later. The leaders are facing incentives that defeats versus interdependence, complex war capital rivals, and the state going to war. And China modernization isn't for offensive use. It's in 17 China's nuclear forces are controlled leadership. Later, it turns out an effective use of their arsenal resources to indicate that. And a fundamental view hasn't changed. China will still be literally responded unless a little Beijing as it doesn't with the warheads and missile piece of China has nearly zero deployment weapons modernization to be driven desire to mean survivability to a new view of nukes. We get new response.
They have no reason why new apps are bad.
They have no reason why new apps are bad. We definitely get new responses because this was like 3 incredibly short cards, one into 9 minutes with like 20 cards, means we get new responses.
Okay. We had 604, does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
lean down and stab it, flex my throat, not to swallow more, and it's swallow. So that's why.
Didn't read that, right? You didn't read that?
I did.
You did?
That's why I was in the door.
I didn't follow that. Sure.
Yes.
Much we do? 333? Thank you.
Counterplay advantage to advantage one.
Should DB face this room? That'd be easier to say.
Counter plan, none were good, advantage. The counterpoint solves the entirety of the escalation scenarios. You should view it through the lens of sufficiency, weigh the evidence against the solvency deficit, and you so vote negative. The counterplan establishes hotline with all the countries with the exception of China that leads to any escalation. As per the counterplan text, we fiat that happens, which means that a no risk of terminal escalation for other actors or spillover minus China because the counterplan negates that. They say it doesn't. They say we don't access the dialogue components of the 1AC. Yes, we do. They've got cards that say a dialogue between the U.S. and other countries are a key deterrent in the escalation. If that is true, then the counterplan accesses that from the same level that they do. The next argument is that we control the escalation. Yes, they might not be right that we can't. That the counterplan doesn't access arms control writ large, but it establishes no gray areas between countries, which is the internal links to escalation scenarios. The argument that they're going to go for is that the counterplan means that no scenario can escalate. Gut check. Even yes, you're right. We've got a card that says hotline solve Chinese escalation, but it's not in the plan text, which means that the card just doesn't serve for anything for the counterplan because it assumes a world where we've established a hotline with China. Gut check. The counterplan does not do that, but establishes one with every other actor within the agency. They've conceded judge kick, which means that if they win the argument that the counterplan mitigates the net benefit, you can kick it for us because it's a logical thesis of conditionality. The solvency advocate portion of the debate, solvency advocates about small things is good, especially in the context of new apps. There's no way that we can prepare or work out cards for hotlines for every single country that is in the 1AC in a world where we don't have it. It's good to negative flex and testing the it's good for negative flex and testing the affirmative as many ways as possible. Absent that or that standard means we never get counterclaims against new apps, which is obviously a bad standard for debate. China, we're good. The China war is good. 1AR gets here too late. The 1AR starts to debate too. The 1AR starts to debate too late. The argument, any new 1AR argument sandbags the block, which they've conceded that's uniquely bad because it's uniquely bad because the app is new, which means that we have to make strategic decisions based off of the 2AC competition and modernization leads to runaway escalation in the future. That's the Heath evidence. You should prefer ours. It's a year newer than theirs. Indicates that escalation and modernization would lead to runaway tensions. It uniquely turns the case page. Subpoint 1 is they conceded the disease turns, which means which means we access it. Nuclear warfare. They've got a no U.S.-China nuclear war card. They have conceded the thesis that nuclear warfare leads to runaway diseases because especially in the war where two of the largest actors are invested in that war, which means there's no innovation for firm, etc. It accesses the rest of the case turns in a war where they've conceded the time frame distinction because the affirmative would take years to be able to solve for all their modeling claims, etc., which means that one, the counterclaim accesses that as much as they do, but more importantly, we've controlled the largest war as per our evidence that is being described in the debate round. The first argument about how we've double turned ourselves. Gut check. You've conceded the thesis that there's a distinction between a future war and war now, which means we're not a double turn to ourselves. Yes, Denmark is describing nuclear weapons, but in a war that is 20 to 30 years in the future, that would which means your extension of the argument is just better game for us, which means that war would obviously result in extinction. The Denmark evidence is a time frame filter. It escalates. You've conceded that escalation is uniquely high in the next 20 years, which means war is inevitable because it's a conceded war, and you should none of their cards that they've run the 1AR assume trends, although you should still strike them because they're not in the context of future evidence, which our evidence is in the context of the only thing I have to win is war now. They've conceded 5 cards arcs in each of them. The first one is the cognitive bias link. The Denmark evidence indicates that weapons deemed unusable now are empirically disproven. The second argument is the thesis trap. The Denmark evidence is descriptive of the future, not the past. No one wants to use nuclear weapons now, but it can't happen. The third argument is the trap. That's the Tega evidence. They've conceded that escalation controls things such as flows in the economy, nukes, etc. Even if they win an argument about how they control escalation, that doesn't matter because they've conceded that their warrants don't apply to these scenarios because it's predicated off of a global economy.
It stays conventional now.
Yeah. independently that it stays conventional now. The fourth argument is Denmark evidence that the flow of the economy that was extended above. Fifth is good interlock between finance and trade in the free market. Long-term determined, they've considered that long-term nuclear deterrence fails. That's the library and press evidence, which indicates that a strike now has to happen. Framing issue, they've conceded that strikes now solves any risk of war. Don't make me reinvent the wheel when that was explained in the 2NC. They've also considered the piece of evidence that don't have the author indicates China's not ready, which means that we would win a war quickly and decisively now. There's only a risk that it's try or die, which means that it's only a risk that it's try or die in the future. Group the intervening actor stuff, they've conceded that institutions are perceived as disrespectful towards Chinese actors because they're not always ready. Danish one. Disease won't cause extinction. Support one natural selection. Disease favor limited lethality to ensure the host of the survive so they can spread it out their host. 883 extinctions have occurred since 1500. Only 4% of diseases. Democracy. Ask yourself how reliable things like arms service and larger internal fuel. Stability. The Mueller investigations and using a pardon on himself. Nepotism. Firing Comey, etc. The list continues. They failed to explain how they overcome that. And democracies will never stop war to prevent a war. They can have failed to articulate how they overcome their evidence that cherry picks examples. Public pressure and strong internal entities of nationalism and perceptions for what the citizens can call for, and the Gulf about Kuwait, etc.
333, start now. Use the cyberplank. I'm gonna use the cyberplank to make a note to them. You're a joke, dude. That's all cyber.
I'll look right up. Hold on a second. Does this have the marks? I don't see it. I don't remember too much. It doesn't make sense that he brings up the camera on himself. Sorry. Okay.
secrecy, transparency, solvency, the advantage counterplan. Executive military secrecy is blurring the lines between war and peace. That causes cyber attacks. Those escalate to nuclear war through Trump retaliation. The act providing oversight on arms sales deters executive adventurism, which solves those cyber attacks happening in the first place. The counterplan has no oversight, has no mechanism in which to deter executive adventurism, which means they can't solve the cyber impact. They haven't even extended any planks to the counterplan that solves that in the first place, which means you can't weigh that. It outweighs on time frame. The 2 goes for that the impact of the China war that causes extinction is 20 to 30 years from now, which means that we will inevitably outweigh on time frame because the cyber attack will happen now, which means that extinction happens before your big China war happens in the first place, which means that there's absolutely no way you can do that. We link to your same nuclear winter arguments so that we still get the same internal link to extinction, but you've considered that cyber attacks are coming now. That's the saber evidence, and that they cause extinction, and that the counterplan definitely doesn't solve it. The transparency advantage. Trump is sorting congressional transparency on arms sales. Now that causes rampant illicit small arms trade, which outweighs nuclear war. There's a key framing question. You've conceded the non-evidence that says that illicit arms trade outweigh nuclear war. Specifically, the death toll from small arms dwarfs all other weapons, and in most years exceeds the amount of carnage from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Your impact time frame of 20 to 30 years means that 20 to 30 Hiroshima and Nagasaki's happen between now and the impact. At worst, the AF stops the small China war and prevents 20 to 30 years of nuclear wars happening in the status quo, which means that we will always inevitably outweigh on time frame. Always outweigh on time frame. Yeah. We conceded all the defense in the status quo, but the impact turned proper. The 1AR should get new answers. You say that it sandbags the block and that new apps are bad. First, you didn't have any reason for why the new apps are bad until through the entirety of the negative block, which means that you should not give any offense to this happening in the first place. You should allow new defense because they practically conceded that planks of the counterplans without solvency advocates are bad, but reading it in the 2NC still causes 2AC and 1AR time skew, which is a conceded theoretical reason to reject the team. But I'm not going for it as a reason to reject the team, but instead as a reason to allow us to read new answers. Their only answers to the no U.S.-China war evidence is that it's not in the context of future evidence. Obviously, it is in the context of the future evidence. There are specific factors like geography and mutually assured destruction, which prevents U.S. and China from ever escalating war in the status quo, which is an argument that's conceded, which means that there's at least a small risk of the turn in the first place. Also, the Logan evidence is conceded, which says that specifically China's modernization in the status quo isn't offensive and won't cause any retaliation from the United States, which means that there's absolutely no reason. There's no reason for this. You don't have any offense on why the nuclear war would turn. The cyber attacks impact, which definitely outweighs, as I've done above, and small arms definitely also outweigh. Alex?
They have no evidence that says that we would strike there.
Okay. They have no evidence that said that we would conventionally first strike in the first place. The 1NC evidence just indicates, that a conventional war now would be good because it wouldn't escalate and we would win. But they have no evidence that says that it would be conventional in the status quo or that it wouldn't escalate. We obviously had a nuclear war scenario in the 1AC, so don't let them get out of this by saying that it wouldn't escalate when the Adney evidence what was the other evidence? The Kennerton and Nashe evidence indicates that when it escalated to great power nuclear war in the first place, there's absolutely no distinction between these two, which means that it would definitely escalate to nuclear war in the status quo, which the counterplan wouldn't solve in the first place. The solvency page. Again, they didn't go to the solvency page. The Middle East war would cause extinction because executive fluctuation on arms sales posture will inevitably cause Afghani instability, which will lead to an escalation of the Middle East to nuclear war, which causes extinction. That's the Barras and 17 evidence. The counterplan definitely doesn't solve this in the first place. One, because it doesn't solve executive fluctuation in arms in arms posturing, which means that you don't get any access to this in the first place, but second is that the counterplan doesn't even have a plank about Afghani instability, which is what the internal link on the solvency page is in the first place. So this is an independent scenario which the counterplan doesn't solve that will cause the extinction before your big China war, the advantage counterplan. All this efficiency framing is new, and it doesn't solve any of the impacts. One is you haven't extended any of the cyber you haven't extended any planes to the counterplan that solve cyber attacks. I'll extend the solvency deficit here. The counterplan doesn't get rid of military executive secrecy, which means because it doesn't require Congress to intervene, and it doesn't change the NPR, so we would still respond to a cyber attack with a nuclear first strike. This is a unique scenario for escalation because of the new impact of nucleus and the 1AR. The only internal link that we have to cyber attacks is executive military secrecy, blurring the line between war and peace, which means that which means that asymmetric actors would inevitably cause cyber attacks, which would allow them to misattribute that attack to a different country, which would cause Trump to do a nuclear first strike, because the NPR states that in response to a cyber attack would be a nuclear first strike attack, which is a scenario you don't have solvency for.
The one-way hotlines thing.
The hotline stuff doesn't solve any of the escalation scenarios because it creates specific bilateral hotlines, but not collaborative hotlines, which can't solve or de-escalate any of those scenarios because it still doesn't provide transparency to all of the countries about who has what arms and how to not circumvent them into the illicit trade market in the first place, which means it terminally can't solve then illicit arm trade. What? No evidence means you should reject the counterplan.
I still want a neg card docket if you want one.
I just got over stress when I shake your hand.
Fair enough, I get strep really easily, so let's not do
I'll
that.
do this because I'm not sure if I have strep. So I'm just gonna do that.
Do you want app card doc?
I'll ask you for specifics. I'll just find it.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's kind of what I was trying to do.